Hey everyone, this is Steve Jordans. I'm a professor of psychology from University of Toronto, Scarborough. I've tried to give this talk twice now and get it down to 20 minutes, and I can't quite do it. So I'm going to kind of bounce on through this one and see where we can get. Okay, the hope of this talk is to really do two things. One is to give you and your family a clearer sense of anxiety, what it is, why we feel it, what is this? And then once you understand anxiety, then we're going to talk about some specific tips and strategies to help you and your children, as we get through the end of this COVID pandemic. So that's the goal. I'm going to jump right into it right here. So here's the real important distinction to the story I want to tell you. Our brain, of course, is where we make all of our complex decisions. And the spinal cord, by the way, is actually considered part of the brain, part of what we call our central nervous system. But that central nervous system interacts with the body, with the muscles, with the organs in our body. And it does so predominantly through chemicals, hormones that trigger certain things, trigger certain muscles or organs into activity or not. And it turns out there's actually two distinct modes of being that we have. So mostly, the vast majority of the time, we are in what we'll call rest and digest mode. And that's just when we're chilling out, enjoying life. And literally, kind of as implied here, this is associated with a general relaxed way of being and one that promotes digestion. So quite literally, we see things like heart rate slow, breathing becomes deeper, longer, deeper breaths. The eyes are not so focused on the external world, so we see constriction of the pupil. But meanwhile, everything involved in digestion is kind of getting kicked in, right from the saliva, the pituitary glands, the saliva, but down to the bladder and the gallbladder and the stomach and the pancreas. And basically what your body is doing is now taking that food that you ate, separating the waste from the nutrients, delivering the nutrients to the body, and eliminating the waste. Okay? And that's what you do most of the time. That's what your body does most of the time. However, imagine you're chilled out on the couch, relaxing. Imagine you're home alone, and then you hear a smashing of a window upstairs. Turns out we have a special mode, and almost a sort of little internal superhero that jumps up almost automatically, gets triggered automatically when there's danger around. And we call this the fight or flee system. And really, it's the reverse of almost everything I told you about. All those digestive organs get told to shut down. Don't worry about digestion right now. It's not important. And instead, our heart starts beating faster, our lungs start breathing faster but shallower, and our pupils now dilate to let in more light. We're actually becoming ultra sensitive to the world around us. We become very sensitive to sounds and to sights around us. What's going on, by the way, here is that the heart and lungs are now pumping oxygen-rich blood to your muscles, and that makes your muscles super strong. So the idea is you were sitting on that couch, you heard the window crash, and now you're suddenly alert, super alert, and tingly. You can feel all this strength, and you feel compelled to do something. And we can usually capture that something in these two words: to either go up there and take it on, fight, or to get the heck out of there, to flee. No matter which you choose, that super strength you now feel will help you. If you're going into a fight, you want to be ready to fight. You want your muscles at the strongest and the best. If you're going to run away, you want to run away. So again, you want your muscles to be at their best. And so that's what all that oxygen-rich blood is there to do. And the system in general is there to help us to face certain kinds of threats. So you guys have probably heard of this example. A girl lifts the car off the father. Imagine you're a girl, you go out and you see your father has somehow gotten trapped under a car. That kicks in this fight or fleet system. We've got danger here. We've got a problem. You have this super strength, and yes, you may have enough strength to lift a car up off your father. And we've heard these stories, and we say, well, a young girl can't lift a car. Normally not. But when you're in this fight or flight mode, you can. And so that's what it's there for. It's there to give us sort of superpower and super strength in the face of emergencies where we need it. Okay, now here's where things get tricky. There's emergencies and there's emergencies. There's what we call acute stress, and then there's what we call chronic stress. The system I just described was evolved for acute stress. And what that means is that's the sort of stress that appears, you deal with it, and then it disappears. So for example, imagine just running late or you're stuck in traffic, and so when you're in that mindset, I'm going to be late, I'm stuck in traffic, I'm going to get in trouble, we feel that fight or flight, we feel all that anxiety. But then we get out of traffic or we get to work. And even if we're late, okay, we're late, whatever. But then when we get there, all of that goes away and we go back to rest and relax. Okay, that's what the system was meant for. A bear pops out, we get excited, we fight it or flee, and then we go back and we relax. What it wasn't evolved for are threats that stay there all the time. We call these chronic stresses, like a bad relationship or a stressful job, or, a virus that's changed our whole way of living. COVID is the ultimate chronic stress. It's there when we wake up. We're reminded of it continually all through the day, and it's not going away. And this is when things go wrong, because that superhero mode I've told you about, that fight or flee mode, that's meant to be active just for a while and then go away. If it's active too long, then problems start to happen. And in fact, what this graph actually shows us is we tend to like a little bit of stress, a little bit of anxiety in our life tends to get us performing at our best. But if the anxiety is too strong or if it lasts too long, our ability to perform within that environment starts to drop. Our cognitive abilities, we get exhausted, we get tired, we get fat, by the way, because we have this hormone called cortisol in our body, and it has this negative effect. This is why we cannot continually stay anxious. We're going to crash if we do. And by the way, part of that crash is our immune system not being as good as it was. And so we become more prone to the virus. So we can't have this. We need to find ways to get away from the anxiety. We can't just live it all the time. We will crash. Okay? So I hope you now understand, what anxiety is. Why do you feel like that? And the real story of COVID is we're humming along in that fight or flee mode all the time. That's why you're seeing more spousal abuse and issues like that. That's why we're seeing more violent crime in general. People are kind of humming along. So what do you do? What do you do to get a break from that? Okay, so now I want to hit these points and try to go through these efficiently. So let's just start by saying there's sort of two different ways you can do this. You can manage your anxiety by managing your environment. Notice that it's the environment that's been making you anxious, right? It's stuff going on. It's the TV that you watch. It's the stories that you hear. That's how we become anxious. Things come into our mind and they get us thinking about stuff. Well, it turns out we can also change what we're thinking about by using the environment as well. I'm going to talk a lot about that today. I'm not going to talk about the second one, other than to say there's a skill you can learn. The skill of actually summoning a relaxed feeling over your body. You can't be both anxious and relaxed. So if you can learn to summon relaxation, that's a skill-based approach you can learn. You have to take some time and develop that skill. It's something else we can talk about, but for now, let's focus on the sort of quicker and easier things you can do to help you and your family manage your anxiety. Why you and your family? Because it starts with you. If you want to help your children deal with the anxiety they're feeling, the first trick is for you to deal with the anxiety that you may be feeling. There's this notion called observational learning. Albert Bandura was the famous psychologist who really focused on this. And it's just that very simple idea that children watch what you do. Our children are watching us live, and what we are shouts louder than anything we can say. They resonate to us emotionally through empathy. They feel what we're feeling. What we would like them to feel is calm, safe, in control, and empowered. Those last two are kind of the same. I'm going to highlight the importance of feeling like you have a certain amount of power as we go through this. But really what's important is safety to children. That's number one. Once they have enough food and water and stuff, the next thing they need to feel is safe. And you need to make them feel safe. And the best way to do that is if you feel safe. If you literally have this sort of calm, in control demeanor, if you can get yourself to that place, then it'll be easier to get them to that place. Now, obviously, it might be a work in progress, right? You might be working on yourself as you're working with them. And what do we even mean by getting yourself to the right place? Let's talk about that a little bit more. It all starts with the basics. Good nutrition. This is no time for caffeine or high sugar. I've swapped my caffeine for tea, thanks to actually the one of the TMS Gladiator talks. One of the talks, I was part of your tea tasting, and since then I've swapped out my caffeine for tea that has no caffeine. Cheers. That's a good idea. Get a lot of aerobic exercise. And this is important for your kids because they used to get a lot more exercise just in schools and stuff. They need this aerobic exercise. You need this aerobic exercise 3 times a week. Heart rate above baseline for at least 20 minutes. Doing something. I'm going to suggest things like dancing in a moment. But finding something that gets your heart rate up, we know this has a positive effect on mood state. So make sure you have that aerobic activity in you and your children's life, and make sure you sleep well. Well, that's an easy thing to say and a hard thing to do. How do you sleep well? There's, check out websites. You can find whole websites on it, but I'm going to focus on what I think is the core basic, and that is routine. The pandemic has a way of throwing our routines off. Sometimes kids are going to school, sometimes they're watching online, sometimes whatever. It's very important to us that at least 5 days a week, we have a very structured routine to our life. That means getting up the same time, going to bed the same time, having our meals roughly the same time during that day, and maybe even scheduling other activities I'll talk about as we go through. Those schedules help sync our basic biological rhythms to the day. And when we live a consistent schedule, then our mind fits where our day is at. So for example, when it's time to go to sleep, our mind is ready to go to sleep. And so this will be critical at least 5 days a week. Try to have a structured schedule. And if you can do that, that will help you all sleep better, and that will make everything better. Okay, let's keep this structure in mind, and let me talk about some of the things you might put into it during your day. First of all, social connections. We are the most social animal that exists. We live for our social connections. They are our go-to strategy when we're dealing with fear or grief or trauma of any kind. We reach out to people we love. That's what's made COVID so tricky, because if we have our choice, we hug the people we love. Well, COVID has made it very difficult for us to be physically near other human beings. But we want to stay psychologically close. In fact, closer if we can. This is a time, we used to be able to rely on social interactions just happening organically as we went through our day. We would meet certain people, we would chat, blah, blah, blah. A lot of that isn't happening now. And so we should schedule social interactions for you and your children. There should be times you schedule in the day when you reach out and connect with other important people in your lives. And in fact, let me get back to that empowerment idea. One of the suggestions I would give you is to consider adopting some people in your community that maybe could use a little bit more connectivity. Maybe they're a little isolated. And if you adopt them with your family and say, we're going to call you 2 or 3 times a week as a family. We're each going to take turns talking to you. You can tell your children we're doing that for them. And you are. You will be doing a really nice thing for that person that you call. You will also be doing a nice thing for your children because you're giving them a sense that they're doing something positive for somebody at a tough time. That feels empowering. That makes the child feel less of a victim. So any way you can find for your children to have a positive effect, whether they're writing gratitude cards for healthcare professionals or anything like that, if you can make them feel like they're contributing, that can make them feel better. Okay, and social connections are a great way to do that. So make sure for you and for them, you're including these social connections in your schedule and reaching out to people, especially the friends they used to spend a lot of time with. Make sure they're still able to connect in some way. And this could be Zoom, this could be phone, this could be, etc. Whatever makes sense. But those social connections are important. Also, I mentioned how the environment brings things into our mind. Well, let's think of the negative side of this, something like the news. When you watch the news, you get anxious. It reminds you of COVID, right? And so it can feed anxiety into your mind. So one thing I'd suggest is become mindful of this. Every now and then when you do some activity, think, how do I feel after that? And if you feel anxious, remember that activity makes me anxious. And maybe I want to follow that activity. First of all, maybe I want to minimize how often I do that activity. But if it's news and if I need the information, then I need it. So maybe right after I do that activity, I'll do something that makes my mind feel better. Well, what makes your mind feel better? Here are a few things. If you can work them in with your family, and you'll notice a theme here, and the theme is kind of music. But if you can sing, dance, and generally use music. So my example here would be like karaoke. Have a karaoke health night. Maybe have, an hour every second day where you get together with the family and do karaoke. And maybe sometimes you sing the songs they want you to sing, and they sing what you want them to sing. And if if it's fun and people are dancing and people are singing, this is medicine. Okay, this counters the effects of anxiety, and really kind of puts people into this positive mood state. It makes for better family bonding. If you can bring in friends, trying to do karaoke through virtual, bring in friends, all that kind of stuff is good. But more generally, realize the things that make you feel good and use them as medicine. There's another one, which is laughter. The more you can find excuses to laugh, the better. So if you see your children laughing, pay attention. What just made them laugh? Let me get more of that in their life. And the same with you. If things are making you laugh, if things are making you feel good, notice that made me feel good. I want more of that. We need those things during COVID. And so that'll help you get in the right place, but it'll also help your kids. Like if your kids see you laughing and they start laughing, that is medicine. Okay, that is what we need. So yes, seek out comedies, do whatever you can do. Maybe it's just for laughs, practical jokes, whatever it may be. If it makes you laugh, it's medicine. Okay. So, I could only do so much. We're going to have a Q&A where I can talk a little bit more, but hopefully that kind of pushed things a little bit. I will mention I have this free online course where I talk about these strategies and a bunch of other ones, including that relaxation thing I talked about generally. So please feel free to sign up for the course. You can just go to coursera.org and type mind control, which sounds ominous, but it's not. It's quite nice. And so that's the end of my talk for now. I look forward to our Q&A session where we can stretch your legs and talk about anything you want to. I will see you there. Bye-bye.